Hey everyone, welcome to the Ningen Plays channel. Today we are going to be talking about Elden Ring Nightreign, of course releasing very soon both on console and PC, and we are going to be talking about things you need to know before jumping in and playing Elden Ring Nightreign. So let us begin. The first thing to mention is this is not your average Soulsborne game. This should go without saying if you've seen any of the promotional footage and info that has been coming out, but it is important to have a good expectation of what you are getting into. This is a fast-paced roguelike experience where you'll be landing into an ever-changing map of Limveld, trying to get as powerful and well-equipped as you can while time progresses and the night creeps in a format just like the storm in a typical battle royale, a circle that closes in and makes areas of the map inhospitable. At the end of the day, as the circle closes you into a smaller and more specific area, you will then fight the end of night boss, and upon defeating them, you will begin day 2, have the full map available again, and attempt to do the same thing. The first 2 days last around 10 to 15 minutes, and then day 3 is much shorter. Once you've defeated the night 2 boss, day 3 essentially begins with an opportunity for you to use a Sight of Grace to level up from the experience you got and the loot from that previous boss, and then you essentially walk forward a small area, open a giant door, and leads you to the Night Lord, which is of course the final boss of the 3-day set. So day 3 is a much shorter, is essentially just the boss fight. So day 1 and 2 are where the main exploration, battles and leveling up occurs. Whether you win or the run or not, you will receive some rewards and then return to the Round Table Hold, which is the main hub area. Equipment and upgrades collected during the run do not carry over, nor do any character progression or levels. You do receive runes, which is a system where you can equip these to specific characters, which will give them permanent buffs, certain abilities, different stat buffs, all kinds of things. That is a system that I will be releasing a more detailed guide for once I've got my hands on the game, had a good opportunity to test it all out, and then I will be making a more detailed guide. You will also receive a currency called Merc, which can be used for various unlockables such as cosmetics. The full list of everything available with that is not available at the time, as this is something that still has not been shown off in any of the special events and gameplay streams and things like that that have come out for Nightreign. So I've seen a lot of people ask about solo play and the general co-op aspect, so let's address that. The game is obviously centered around 3-player co-op working together as a team. There are options for solo play, but the game's enemies and bosses have been designed around fighting against a group of players, so can potentially be very challenging if you are alone. I mean, that in and of itself, for true die-hard Soulsborne players, I suppose, will welcome the challenge of trying to get these runs done solo, but it does change up the game quite significantly, right? Unlike the normal Elden Ring or Dark Souls experience, if you run out of HP, you go down and can be revived by your teammates. If you don't get revived by your teammate, as long as you're not in one of the final end of night boss fights or the Night Lord, you do indeed die, but you respawn, lose a level, and you can progress from there. If you are fighting an end of night boss, then the run is instantly over if every player is dead. So obviously this means if you are playing solo, when you are fighting one of the 3 bosses, whether it be end of night 1, 2 or the Night Lord at the very end, if you go down, you don't have teammates to revive you, so that is instant run over, back to the Round Table Hold, get your participation rewards. So this is something that's very important to know going into the game, because you will largely be playing with co-op match-made players from all around the world. The communication in the game is reliant on things like pings and a bunch of selected emotes. There is no in-game voice chat, so obviously depending on the format that you're playing on, whether you choose to play with friends or use sites like LFG and things like that to find groups of people, you will be able to use voice communication that exists outside of that. So for example, if you're playing on PC like me and playing with people that you know, Obviously, you could all be using Discord or something similar. If you're playing on Xbox, you could all be in an Xbox party, but there is no in-game communication. So there's something to be aware of, that a lot of the time, unless you are playing with specific friends, you will be playing with random other players and you cannot communicate with them directly by voice. So this is obviously a very different kind of game from From Software, and I know many people are skeptical. This is not like what we would have expected as the next entry into the Elden Ring universe, right? It's a very different kind of game. A lot of people see it as like a asset flip cash grab, but the more I see of it personally, the more excited I am for a fresh and different game set in a familiar framework. The way I try to describe it is, it's not the thing I would have asked for, right? Like out of the blue, I would not have picked off the top of my brain, you know what would be great for the next Soulsborne game? A multiplayer roguelike experience. But now that that is what we've been presented with, it does seem like something that is going to be a lot of fun. So obviously let me know what you guys think of that down below. The next thing that is certainly going to be important to know is how the map works, how the world of the game functions between run to run. So we know this is a roguelike, which of course means a lot of things are randomized, but there will be certain things that are the same at all times, and those things are going to be very important to get used to. The layout of the map is obviously random when it comes to things like loot, enemy locations, enemy camps, roaming mini bosses, all that kind of stuff. That is all randomized when you load into the game in a true roguelike fashion. But certain things are going to be the same, like cave entrances and exits, even though obviously the enemies and loot and things like that in the actual caves themselves can be different, but the fixed points where you enter and exit them on the map will be the same. The jump points that you use to get up cliffs, obviously there was a bunch of these in the base Elden Ring that you would jump up with Torrent. Now you just do that sort of on foot to project yourself up these giant areas. And the spectral trees that allow you to grab onto and glide on spectral birds to cover large distances in a shorter amount of time. A lot of these things are mostly in fixed locations. So it means whilst many areas of the map are going to change from time to time, if you learn these areas and where these things are, it will help you to navigate the map in a much faster fashion, which obviously is going to be very useful if there are specific places that you want to go. The circle is closing in, you only have limited time. Now there are of course things like the shifting earth feature, which essentially is a modifier that can be applied to a game run, which you can see in the round table hold when you go into the matchmaking. It will show you on the screen that a shifting earth feature is going to be active in that particular game, and you do have the option in the round table hold of going to and using a bed to sleep, and it essentially re-rolls or changes the effect that is going to be in play. So if there's a particular one you've already seen or that you particularly don't like, or you just want to see other new ones, you do have a way to change that. The one that we've been shown so far in some of these gameplay things is the crater, which essentially makes a large lava-filled crater appear, changing the northern part of the map. Essentially becomes a dungeon that you can descend into with tough enemies and some great loot. However, of course, you know, you've got to be very careful when exactly you choose to venture into this area, because then you have to climb like up and get back out of this crater. And if you get stuck in there as the circle closes in, especially if you get stuck down deep enough, that could just be an immediate game over. But getting to know the general layout of the map is going to be very important. There's always a large castle that spawns in the middle, which can be used as a focal point. There's normally a giant there, which is like a mini boss that can give some decent loot. There's also randomly spawning, you can see them on the map, churches. I believe there's usually 3. If you go to them, you can receive from the altar an extra charge to your Estus flask. So obviously things like this are very important. So for example, at the start of the game, looking to find the one that is at the outermost edge of the map is a good idea to make your primary target, because of course as the circle starts to close in, you would then not be able to reach that church without going into the storm and being damaged. Another thing that's been pointed out is the storm does a lot more damage than it did in the network test. Obviously the whole point of this is to force you into the smaller and smaller area to get to the end of night boss, so you cannot spend a lot of time in the storm before it kills you, or you essentially just rinse through all of your healing items. So getting to know the layout of the map is going to be very important. This is obviously something that will come with time and experience, so keeping an eye out for some of these key features is going to be very important. The next thing that is important to know about is, of course, the characters that you are going to be playing as in Nightreign, the Nightfarers. So unlike other Soulsborne games, you do not create a character in Nightreign. You choose from one of 8 pre-created characters with various different attributes and abilities. There potentially will be more characters added later in DLC, but there are 8 when the game launches. Now, obviously, every character has their own strengths and weaknesses, and a lot of the characters do seem very similar to traditional archetypes that you would see in Souls games or general RPGs. In interviews, the director of the game has said that for each of the 8 characters, they essentially started with the idea of a class archetype and then built from there. And obviously, while some of those may have changed and may have some abilities that you wouldn't necessarily see with that kind of class in another game, that's where they've essentially all started from. So it's kind of like when you begin a Souls game and you pick your starting class, and then of course we all know it's not something you actually have to stick to, because as you level up you will be able to change your stats, and essentially you could change your strength build into a magic build if you really wanted to. Although you'd end up having more points in strength than you would probably need. This game you play as set characters, and when you level up as you play through and you defeat enemies and you rest at the sites of grace, you can level up, which will essentially just give you predetermined stat boosts. You do not distribute any stat points yourself, you will just get set level ups for the characters as you go through. So it's very important to pick the character that best suits your playstyles. I have made guides on all of the characters, so do go ahead and check those out if you want a breakdown of their abilities. But one thing that is definitely very important is you cannot play as the same character as somebody else. So if you get loaded into a game and somebody has already picked Raider, for example, you cannot play as Raider. Now, a pop-up that was shown during one of the stream events that we saw seems to indicate that there is a penalty if you quit out of a game early. Now, I'm not entirely sure what that is going to be. A lot of online competitive games will have things like quitting out early will then lock you out of like the matchmaking queue for a certain amount of time. So one thing that I think is very important is to try out all the characters, see which one gels best with you, and then have 2 or 3 characters that you really want to put time into learning, depending on which ones are your favorites. Because if you lock all of your attention and all of your focus onto one character, only play as one character, only equip runes and buffs and things like that to one particular character, and then you load into a game and you can't play as them, then obviously you're going to be very disappointed, and that's going to dampen the experience for you overall. So it's very, very important to get used to the different characters and what they do, know their strengths and weaknesses, because whilst a team of any 3 Nightfarers, if you play well, play together effectively, know how to play your character, will be able to be successful in a run, there's going to be a lot of fun synergies between the characters and their different abilities. So you may be the kind of person that if you enjoy playing as all the different characters, you put in a bit of playtime with all of them, maybe you load into a game, see who the other 2 teammates have picked, and then decide who you want to be based on who would then complement that team of 3 as a third person. So there are a lot of options, but of course, you know, if you have your one primary character you really want to get good with, there's nothing to stop you from trying to play as that character as much as you want, but just be aware that sometimes you may not be able to. So having knowledge and experience with the other characters is going to be beneficial, and I think more fun overall, because all of the characters certainly have their pros and cons. And whilst I have my own ones I'm drawn more towards wanting to put more time into, I'm looking forward to playing as all of them. Next up is the question, is there a story? And the answer is yes. We know that in Soulsborne games there is of course an overarching narrative, however the games are famous for having lore that is not always the most easy to access, right? Things like item descriptions, hidden side quests, and many things of the like have revealed secrets about the game, sometimes even long after release when something has been discovered for the first time, and something as simple as an item description can give a whole load of insight into a character or an event that happened in the game. But of course, the mainline titles, and like Elden Ring especially, do have a major story path that you follow. So Nightreign is of course something very different. As you load into each unique run, you have your main objectives, you fight through the 3 days, you fight the Night Lord at the end, and then you return to the Round Table Hold with your loot, and that is one run done. You can obviously stop there if you like, or jump straight into another run, but essentially that is the cycle of gameplay for Nightreign. And within the runs themselves, there is obviously not a huge amount of story. The bosses themselves will have lore and backstories that we will hopefully learn through item descriptions, loading screens, various things like that. But when it comes to the actual characters, the Nightfarers themselves, there is a very interesting system for learning their backstories and learning some lore about them, and that is called the Remembrance system. So these are very different for each character. They will often be quest paths, cutscenes, all sorts of different things, often triggered originally in the Round Table Hold. We saw some instances of I the Archer, for example. You load into an instance which is essentially like a memory or a flashback, speak to an NPC, and they will give you an objective. Now when you jump into your next game and you choose to play as I or whichever character the remembrance you're trying to follow, you will then have to seek out that objective yourself during that run. Now obviously this is something you could like run off and do by yourself, or communicate with your teammates and have the party all move in that general direction, but you essentially have to go and complete this objective. For example, one of the ones we've seen in gameplay clips is Duchess going to a specific area of the map, which then spawns a couple of Red Phantom Invader type enemies, and upon defeating them you get a thing pop up which says objective achieved. And then once the run is finished, obviously it has no effect on your specific hunt for that 3-day cycle. You go ahead, you do your thing, you beat the Night Lord or not, and return to the Round Table Hold, and then you can go back into your character's remembrance with this completed objective and unlock the next part of their story, which could just be a conversation with an NPC, receiving items with their description, or receiving another quest to go ahead and do on your next run. So it's interesting because this very much falls in line with that typical Souls aspect of like the lore is there if you want to go and find it. But obviously for players, you know, there may be some people out there, if you don't particularly care about the lore of the characters and you just want to play the game for the fast-paced roguelike action, doing the 3-day cycle, jumping straight back in, doing another one, and you're not particularly interested in the lore, all of this stuff is completely optional. So the story is there if you want it. I'm certainly very interested to see what they are going to be. I think once we've managed to get them all done, I will probably do videos going over their remembrances and their full lore details, so keep an eye out for those going up on the channel in the future. And lastly, of course, the final thing to know is when can you play Elden Ring Nightreign? The game has been available for pre-order on all formats for quite some time now, but you can see here on the screen we do have posted from the official Elden Ring social medias the full world map with the time zones. I did make a short on this the other day, which is up on the channel if you want to check for some specifics. I also posted the image on the community tab, so if you want to take a look at the image yourself, potentially save it and be able to zoom in, you can see the full world map here that will give you the release time in your time zone. You can see from looking at this, the game can be pre-loaded or pre-installed 48 hours prior to the release time. So for most places, when this video is going up, the game is now available to install. I already have it installed on Steam. Obviously can't load it up yet, but already preloaded. And you can see here when the game is going to go live. It does go live on PC in most regions earlier than the console version. It's interesting to note that there is a very different spread of the time differences. In the US, most of the time zones, the difference is 6 hours. The game comes out 6 hours earlier on PC. And then where I am in the UK, you can see it's 11 p.m. and then the console version comes out at midnight, so only 1 hour difference. Central European time, it seems to come out at the same time, and then as you move in further to the east, there's a difference of 1 or 2 hours. And then as we move over to even further, there are differences of 5 or 7 hours. So make sure to take a look at the image, find where you are in the world, and this will give you the exact release time in your local time that the game comes out. And as I said, if you have pre-ordered it, the game should be able to be installed on all formats right now. So there you go. Those are some of the important things that you need to know about Elden Ring right now before it comes out and you choose to buy it and then jump into the game. This is something that I've been looking forward to for a very long time. We are counting down now, less than 48 hours until the game. We will be at release day, so very, very excited. Let me know all your guys' thoughts down below in the comment section. What are your thoughts and feelings about Nightreign, this kind of game being very different from the Soulsborne experience? If you are getting it, if you are excited for it, let me know which character you are going to be playing as, and let me know which key aspect, which thing are you most excited about in Nightreign. Do let me know down below in the comment section. So hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and I will see you guys out there. Peace out.